This was a great show of Enzo Maresca's tactical flexibility, able to change what he wanted from his players despite all the new kids thrown on. Lads, lasses and the rest of the masses, welcome back to another tactical breakdown. Today we're going to be taking a look at the Chelsea versus Shamrock Rovers match and talk about how Enzo Maresca made this so comfortable despite all the rotations to the side. Let's go. Let's start by talking about the two teams and how they set up. Firstly, with Chelsea. Chelsea obviously play this 4-3-3, but this never ends up like this in possession. We always move to some kind of 3-3-4 or some 3-4-3. So we'll kind of move the players into those positions. Now, with this setup in the particular personnel that we had, obviously we have Cucurella here. He's always going to be the player that inverts when we have him in the team because he's just the best at it. So he comes into the midfield, but instead of playing in this kind of box like we usually do, we always have this kind of conversation whether we play a box or a diamond. He usually indicates that we're going to play a diamond. Now, we always see Cucurella kind of play into the left 10 space, the left half space, and Casadei kind of gets left as this lone central defensive midfielder as he pushes up higher into this left 8. Dewsbury Hall kind of plays in the right 8, and then Nkunku plays in the advanced role here. Now, him and Guiu actually made a bit of a difference here because they kind of at times played as two strikers. We saw this with Joao Felix before when Nkunku and him were playing together. We see this kind of duo happen and they kind of match up against the three centre-backs here and kind of occupy all three of them with just the two of them. But we'll kind of talk about that a little bit later. From here, it kind of changes from this initial diamond shape into a bit more of an offensive shape because of the way that Shamrock Rovers set up. Now, they set up with these three central midfielders in this 5-3-2. You have Poom, who's going to be on this left-hand side, who I've highlighted for specific reasons we will talk about later. Likewise, they have the two strikers. They have Johnny Kenny up here. I'll be talking about him a little bit later too. But this is kind of the general way they set up with these two strikers left up top, the three central midfield players, and then the five at the back. And for the most part, their ideal way of getting goals is to hit the long pass after absorbing pressure to Johnny Kenny, who is their top goal scorer and is very, very electric. And once he can get on the end of things, they can get opportunities from those long passes and try and get shots off on goal that way. Now, because of the way they set up with these central midfield players, Chelsea opted to push our three midfielders very, very high. So we see Cucurella getting up here in this left 10, as I spoke about, Keane and Dewsbury Hall doing the same thing on the opposite side. And we eventually get this kind of matching off positions here as Nkunku kind of goes into this left-hand side where Guiu is operating as well, and they kind of operate all three centre-backs as this duo. We get this spare man here in the middle who will obviously be the one that kind of presses Casadei when he gets on the ball. So we get everyone matching up 1-for-1 here, except for the two centre-forwards who will obviously try and occupy our centre-backs at the same time like we're doing with theirs. And I'll talk about this kind of battle for positions in a little bit later when we talk about one of the goals, but for the most part this is kind of what we saw. And when we are obviously on the ball with this kind of setup and we're trying to play out from the back or what have you, there's always going to be the spare man for us really. As they kind of press us, we get the ball out to, for example, Vega, and then as the players kind of shift across in positions, we can kind of navigate it through them that way. Now, Shamrock Rovers, to their credit, they did not sit back and absorb the pressure all the time in this game like we kind of expected them to. They did actually give it quite a good go at trying to press us, get up the pitch and get nice and high and try and stop us from playing out from the back. Unfortunately, that didn't really materialize and we found it quite easy to play out from the back. That's something we kind of thrive at. It's something that we're kind of based to do, and that's our main plan, is trying to play out from the back, create those transitional opportunities after we play it through high presses. And I think that Shamrock were a bit over ambitious in this game overall to try and expect that they could put that pressure on us and could actually stop us from playing the way we wanted to. I think perhaps with the added young players like a Chempong and George and Casadei in the middle, for example, playing today, maybe they thought that they could have made them a bit more unsettled because they're playing for their first time as being first team players, Josh and George especially. So they probably would have thought if they put the pressure on us, they could have forced some mistakes, and when they get the mistakes again, they can break with balls into Kenny and try and get opportunities that way. I just don't think it worked out particularly for them just because of the individual quality that we had. As for Chelsea, our kind of aim for this game especially was to do what we usually do, get it out to the wide areas, create the 1v1s over the pitch, win our 1v1 duels. We get the opportunities with Madueke and George out on the left hand side, especially in the first half. I think that George was really, really good, trying to kind of terrorize his opposite number, and as I said, trying to win those individual battles, win those 1v1s. But we see interesting things happen in this setup because of how deep they played. If we move everyone back a little bit to get some more space here, you can kind of actually see how we kind of achieve this, right? So we get the players matching up with, obviously, as I said, the centre mids all kind of being together, and with the two strikers standing on the halfway line waiting for the balls over the top, we get Disasi kind of being left alone here on his own as Vega and Achampong push really high, trying to get into advanced positions. This is a bit exaggerated, but just so you can see him. And we kind of see these two triangles form, right? We get this triangle with Vega, Cucurella, and George over here on this left-hand side, and on the right-hand side it's a similar thing with Achampong, Dewsbury Hall, and Madueke. And we kind of see a feature of this team, and someone who I really want to highlight in this game, and we'll talk about him again a little bit later because of one of the goals, but Kiernan Dewsbury Hall I think was really, really impressive in this game. Him and Cucurella play in similar positions, but obviously he's on the wrong side, so he plays a little bit differently. As Cucurella is left-footed and can play the ball on his strong foot, he kind of ends up being this player that can kind of go around the outside and try and put balls in and kind of occupy players by doing those types of runs, whereas Kiernan can't really do that, so he's kind of operating in this special way where he goes out and tries to be the spare man, and kind of when the ball goes out here to Madueke, and he's faced up with his fullback, he's trying to be the one to kind of drag players out of position. So as he kind of box crashes into the area, and with the opposite number follows him, it opens up all this space for Madueke to drive into as he kind of gets away from his man. And obviously with Achampong also being here, at times we can kind of get that 2v1. So if the ball goes to Achampong and Madueke wants to go into this space, for example, the ball can go there. And obviously, as I said, the centre backs are a bit more narrow than I've actually put them here, and they're kind of occupied by Guiu or Nkunku, whoever is on that side at the time. And we kind of keep seeing this happen in the first half, especially on the left hand side, as I said, with Vega and George and Cucurella just picking up this nice little triangle of positions that they couldn't really keep up with our wingers getting in behind and kind of trying to take them on. For the most part, they stayed quite solid, and for the first 20 minutes or so, they were actually very good at defending these scenarios and not letting them result in goals, but we were creating opportunities at will from these triangles. And as I said, we'll talk about some specific examples when we get into talking about the goals, but for the most part this was kind of our game plan: make those triangles, get our wingers into positions where they can impact the game out wide, and then try and put balls into the box for Guiu or for Nkunku. And also from those triangles, if we couldn't get success from the wingers, in fact it would actually be those centre mids getting into these advanced positions where we could kind of then put the ball across for cutbacks. We always talk about the fact that we are not a very aerially dominant team, so getting the ball across the face of the goal is usually our prerogative, whether that be with Dewsbury Hall making those runs into the byline, or Madueke who gets there sometimes. And he can obviously take his fullback one way and then put it across on his right foot despite being left-footed. He's very capable of doing that. We see that happen a few times in this game. Obviously nothing really materializes from it, as they have the three centre-backs. They're able to pretty much clear it quite easily, but those were kind of how we were trying to create our opportunities. Before we continue though, if you enjoy these types of tactical breakdowns, let me know by hitting the like button down below, and for more videos like this, make sure you subscribe as well. I do these videos after every single match day, so that's the best way for you to find these videos. Likewise, the community Discord is now up and running and open to the public, so if you'd like to join that you can. It's totally free, and I run an FPL league in there, so if that appeals to you, the links to all my socials will be down in the description and in the pinned comment down below for those of you on mobile. Now with all of that out of the way, let's talk about the first half. We'll go through all of the goals here and kind of tactically break down what happens in them, and I think the first goal is a great example of one of the kind of nuanced things, because a lot of people will just credit this down to Mark Guiu and his insane pressure and kind of how he stole in front of his player and got the ball, but it's not actually what happens. There's actually some interesting positional kind of situation that happens in the middle of the park, and it's a mistake from the Shamrock Rovers midfield. So we're playing the three centre backs here, and as we're passing it around, trying to create openings, trying to maneuver the ball and pick up positions, the two strikers of Shamrock will be pressing these two players here, right, trying to avoid the pass to Achampong, or the right-sided centre back here. The left striker comes over to Mark Achampong, Kenny comes over here, but this leaves Vega free. And what the Shamrock Rovers midfield decides to do is this right-sided centre mid decides to press really high up the pitch and kind of leave two in the centre here to deal with this ball going out to Vega, and they're trying to put pressure on Vega so he can't play the ball. And what ends up happening is that because the ball does eventually move out to Vega and the centre mid is here, it leaves Cucurella free. And because Cucurella is free, they've obviously not shifted over because these two midfielders are dealing with Casadei and Dewsbury Hall. Because Cucurella is free and this ball is so easily available into him, they actually pushed their right centre back up the pitch to deal with Cucurella. And this is, again, a really silly mistake, but they're putting pressure on here to try and, as the ball goes into Cucurella, to try and put pressure on him, so he has to force him to go backwards and he can't turn and play it to George, for example. But obviously what ends up happening is that we completely ignore Cucurella here. With this centre-back going out of position, there's now more space, and the ball goes over the top to George into that space, but as he kind of runs in here and the fullback, the wing-back rather, follows him in, what ends up happening is the ball goes over and he heads it back to this space expecting the centre-back to be there, and he's not here. Instead, the goalkeeper kind of has to make up for that kind of error of the player not being there, and he moves into that position instead. He completely misses the ball, and obviously Guiu notices this mistake. He's very intense. His press goes crazy. He takes the ball off the goalkeeper and heads it in before he can kind of get to the ball. And as I said, maybe this is just a mistake from Shamrock, but it is interesting to see how we played that kind of positionally, and also it just kind of highlights one of the main issues that a lot of teams have been having against this Chelsea system. It's Cucurella. His position is so troubling for opposition defenses because he doesn't really play in a normal position for a left back. Obviously he'll be wide and be in that left back spot over here when we need him to, but for the most part he's playing either in central midfield in this deep position, or as I said, playing as high as a left-sided 10, and his whole job is just kind of occupying this one lane of the inside 10 position, and it's so difficult for teams to pick up on because he's not usually there. There's not usually a player in this position, and obviously in this scenario they make the mistake of trying to press him and try and stop him from being the available option, and whilst they do that, they forego the space in behind for Guiu and George to obviously exploit. And this highlights something that I mentioned earlier, and I said I would expand upon, is that what Shamrock Rovers really did wrong in this game is that they tried to match us 1v1 and tried to win individual battles, and against a team like Chelsea, no disrespect to Shamrock Rovers, but they are just not the level that we are. They don't have the players that we do, and we will always win the game if we are matching up 1v1. Even with our young players like George and Chempong in here, we are still better than them in every single position, and there is literally no way that they are ever going to say, hey, we're going to take individual battles and win. It was never going to happen. They really needed to either try and double up on players or be more pragmatic, because they were being a bit too brave. And I said this earlier with the press, them committing this player forward, this centre mid, to go to the press and try and stop Vega from having the ball for a long extended period of time, just completely ruins their midfield structure, and then obviously that in turn ruins their defensive structure with the centre back having to come out into the midfield to where Cucurella is. And it's just, it was a mistake from their part, but we kind of forced that mistake by having Cucurella here. If he's just out in a left back spot, they can play the same way here, and it's just there's all this space here that no one's really using, and they can kind of do this, and they're not going to move the centre back into this position if there's no one there, no one occupying the space. So with him kind of foregoing this, and what we do is instead of having the 4 across the face here, we occupy the exact same space as a back 4, but with the back 3, so we can commit this player into midfield, because the way that we play as Vega and Chempong are so wide that we despite having less players here, we have the wide areas covered by 1 player rather than 2, and because of that, again, we can forego having the extra player here and push them into more offensive positions where we kind of want to be playing the ball. Obviously, as a team that has a lot of possession and likes to play the ball around the back a lot, we don't need more players here. And obviously, again, with the way that we play with Jurgensen sometimes coming into the back 4, we can play that back 4, because who really needs a player here marking the goal if you're not going to lose the ball? Obviously, this is very risky, and it's something that we have kind of accepted, that we are going to make mistakes doing this at times, but the reward for playing this way is that we get the extra player in the offensive scenario, and then obviously when we play through the press, we can get scenarios and goal scoring opportunities from that. But despite me saying about the individual quality of Shamrock Rovers, we do get to see some of what they can do basically immediately after this goal goes in, where they do get that opportunity where they, over on this right hand side, they manage to intercept a pass. I believe it's Poom that intercepts this pass, and in turn he is able to switch it on us whilst we've committed all our players forward. Obviously Vega's up here in the triangle like I spoke about, and Chempong's up here with the triangle like I spoke about, and the only player back here really is DSAC, and the ball goes super long to Kenny, who runs into this right channel. And up against DSAC, the one thing that DSAC is not very good at is running back to his own goal. He's not very fast. Kenny is a very quick player, and he gets the ball on this in this kind of advanced area up here, and DSAC, he can't catch him, and he hits this excellent half volley to get it on goal. Jurgensen obviously makes the save, and this kind of falls into their own hands in a way, because despite them not scoring from this, and despite them kind of causing us some worries from these scenarios throughout the game a few times, this isn't actually where their goal comes from. Their goal comes from the resulting corner, which for a team like Shamrock Rovers that weren't going to create many opportunities, they had to be clinical from corners and get their goals from corners, and that is exactly what they did. The ball is swung in from the corner, and Chelsea, as we have kind of been falling victim to a lot recently, did not deal with the ball at all. The ball doesn't get cleared, it falls to the edge of the box, and the guy who I said I was going to highlight earlier, Poom, he gets in, smashes a ball towards goal, takes a little bit of a deflection which takes it past Jurgensen, so a little bit lucky there, but it's a very clean strike and it might have gone in regardless of the deflection. Very good goal from them, and gets them back into the game. Unlike the first, however, the second goal that we score is just a case of Mark Hughes' insane pressing and energy. Despite not really being under any pressure, the right centre-back passes the ball back to the goalie incredibly weakly, and this gives the young Spaniard the time to snatch ahead of the man in goal, take it around him and slot it into the net with a lovely left-footed finish. Not much to analyse here, it's just a poor mistake from the Shamrock backline and a great bit of intuition from our young striker. The third goal is kind of a combination of all the things we've already spoken about. Cassidy wins his individual battle in midfield because they couldn't keep up with us. We play the ball into Cucurella, who's in that weird position that they can't pick up. He gets a really nice pass through to Nkunku, who's kind of occupying two centre-backs at once, as well as Guiu, who's also making the run in. He gets the ball in the box, and despite not actually winning the ball, getting a shot off, he is able to just poke it into the path of Kiernan Dewsbury-Hall, who is box crashing like I said earlier. He gets a lovely left-footed strike from the edge of the box, and it goes past the goalkeeper to get us our third goal, and we go 3-1 up as a result of all of these combined things. The fourth goal comes just before the half-time whistle, and it's again another bit of just individual quality from Noni Madueke. The ball is taken very quickly from a corner, and Shamrock do not switch on for this. They get caught out. Madueke beats his man, puts a ball into the back post, or into the centre of the box rather, with one of those trademark whipping crosses that he's now starting to be able to do, and he gets 2 and 2 for assists as it finds the head of Mark Guiu once again, who is a good number 9, is an aerial target that we do have now, and he heads the ball in for 4-1. Now let's talk about the second half, as we play a slightly different system in the second half, as Noni Madueke is replaced by Harvey Vale. Remember him? Yes, the 21-year-old who made his Chelsea debut back when Thomas Tuchel was in charge has been given a second chance in the first team, first with a small appearance versus Astana, but now with a major involvement against Shamrock Rovers, playing from the start of the second half and changing how we operated. With Madueke coming off, George goes out to this right flank, and Cucurella moves from this left inside position out to a left wide position, almost like a left midfield position. Now, the incredibly versatile Vale, who can play anywhere from left back to right wing, plays in this kind of inverted role that Cucurella was playing, but more as just the operating as the 10 rather than being the one to actually track back as well. Cucurella would still be the one to do that tracking back instead, and he would be more of the offensive player here. And now the team plays in a slightly different shape. Because we have got now Cucurella on this left side and George on this right side, this acts more like a 3-5-2, with us having 2 wing backs rather than having the 2 wingers. Though George would get really high and act like a winger, and obviously Cucurella would do the same thing, it's because of the way we are naturally set up here with a left footer on the left side and a right footer on the right side, it now encourages us more to go around the outside and kind of put it this way rather than go inwards into the centre and kind of get it onto the left foot of someone like Madueke or the right foot of George, who was on this left hand side, get it to Kiernan Dewsbury-Hall on this side, that type of thing. So now we're kind of more involved with getting the ball out wide and then going around the outside instead. And that small change would be accompanied with a small tactical adjustment from Maresca in terms of how we try to create chances. Because we didn't want to go through the middle now, instead there was clearly something said to both Axel Disasi and Cesare Casadei in these two central positions to play the ball more direct through the middle. In the first half, these two were mainly just recycling possession, playing it sideways and backwards and not taking too many risks, kind of allowing us to keep the ball and then allowing the players further up to be the ones to make the chances. In the second half, there was, as I said, there was something clearly said to not only Disasi, but specifically Cesare Casadei, who was way more adventurous in the second half, because we saw them both just absolutely spearing balls through the centre to one of either Giyu, who would drop into this space, or Nkunku, who would drop here. Even Keane and Dewsbury Hall would sometimes come into the central role to pick up the ball, and getting it through the lines of this three in midfield of Shamrock was really, really important. We see multiple chances come from this, and I think it's especially noticeable with Casadei because in the first half he wasn't as adventurous. As I said, he was a bit more reserved, and I think that he got a little bit of stick from the Chelsea fan base in that first half for being a bit too safe in a way and not kind of breaking the lines as someone like Lavia or Caicedo would do. He's not that type of player. Obviously, he's not really used to playing in this 6 role. He's more of a box-to-box 8 naturally. He's much better when he's closer to the opposition box than his own, but I think in the second half he really, really improved, and we found a few opportunities from this type of pass. The first is a great chance for Nkunku as the ball is speared into him from Disasi through the middle. He collects the ball, gets up a yard of space and puts a curler around from the edge of the box into the right side of the goal. The goalkeeper saves it, but it's a very, very good opportunity. Only around 3 minutes later, we get our 5th and final goal of the game as a result of one of these direct passes, but this time from young Cesare Casadei. Now, as I said, I think that he got a lot of stick in this game, unrightfully so. I think a lot of what he does kind of goes unnoticed. This is a fantastic forward pass, and it blasts it into Kieran Dewsbury Hall, who's gotten into space here. He plays a nice 1-2 with Giyu, gets the ball from him into Giyu, who plays it back to Kieran. He plays it to Nkunku. The ball goes from Nkunku to Kukurea, who has come up from this wide position now, and he checks past the right centre-back onto his right foot, and he blasts it in on his right foot, his weaker right foot, with almost an instinctual striker's finish from the left back, and it's good to see him getting 2 from 2 as well. And this rounds out the game with a lovely intricate goal and a clear example of Enzo Maresca's one-touch passing play. There's other opportunities for Felix, George and Vale that go begging too. It didn't matter who was on the pitch, Chelsea were all singing from the same hymn sheet and able to play the football that Enzo wanted. Personally, I think this was a great show of Enzo Maresca's tactical flexibility, able to change what he wanted from his players despite all the new kids thrown on, and the rotation of positions. We move on to more action on Sunday as we take on Everton in the Premier League, and I'll of course be live streaming my pre-match thoughts, predictions and lineup reactions before the match, as well as my post-match reactions after the match with Feeling Blue. But if you want something else to watch until then, perhaps check out this video on screen in the meantime. Thank you guys so much for watching as ever, and remember, in the rain or in the dry, keep that blue flag flying high. Come on, you Blues.